The hotel ballroom buzzed with the energy of success. Our company had just closed its biggest deal of the year, and management had spared no expense on the celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen, while waiters glided between clusters of colleagues balancing trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I stood near the bar, nursing a whiskey and watching my wife work the room. She looked stunning tonight in that emerald dress we'd bought last month. The one she said made her feel confident. I smiled, thinking how lucky I was to have someone so vibrant, so full of life. After 8 years of marriage, she could still light up a room when she walked in. My wife had always been friendly, outgoing in ways I wasn't. Where I preferred quiet conversations with a few close friends, she thrived in crowds. I'd learned to appreciate this difference between us, even if sometimes I felt like a satellite orbiting her bright star. Tonight, she'd gravitated toward Daniel from the marketing department. He was new, maybe 6 months with the company, and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who'd never known rejection. They stood by the window overlooking the city, her hand occasionally touching his arm as she laughed at whatever witty observation he was making. I felt a small twist in my chest but pushed it away. She was just being friendly. That's who she was. Besides, Daniel was engaged to someone in accounting. This was harmless networking, the kind of thing everyone did at these events. "Quite a show," said Tom, my colleague from finance, sidling up beside me. He followed my gaze. "Your wife's certainly popular tonight." I shrugged, trying to appear casual. "She's always been social. It's one of the things I love about her." Tom raised an eyebrow but said nothing, taking a long sip of his drink. The silence between us felt heavy with something unspoken. Across the room, my wife threw her head back in laughter, her hand now resting on Daniel's forearm. The gesture lasted a beat too long. Daniel's fiancée appeared in my peripheral vision, her expression tight as she watched the interaction. "I'm going to refresh my drink," I muttered to Tom, heading back toward the bar. As I waited for the bartender, I caught fragments of conversation around me. The merger talks, weekend plans, office gossip, normal party chatter. But then I heard her name. "She's got some nerve," a woman's voice said behind me. "Flirting like that when her husband's right here." "Maybe he doesn't care," another voice responded. "Or maybe he just doesn't see it." I turned slightly, trying to identify the speakers, but they'd already moved into the crowd. My jaw tightened. I took my fresh drink and moved to a different vantage point, one where I could observe without being obvious. My wife had moved on from Daniel now, circulating through different groups, her laugh carrying across the room like wind chimes. But there was something in the way she moved, the way she angled her body toward the men she spoke with, that I was seeing clearly for the first time. Or maybe I'd always seen it but had convinced myself I was being paranoid, insecure, jealous without cause. Sarah, my wife's best friend since college, entered the ballroom late. I watched as she spotted my wife and started making her way over. They'd been inseparable once, but lately, I'd noticed some tension between them. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Plans that got cancelled at the last minute. Sarah looked different tonight. Where my wife was all sparkle and vivacity, Sarah moved with purpose, her expression serious. She wore a simple black dress and carried her phone in one hand like a weapon. I watched as Sarah's eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on my wife before finding me. Something passed across her face, determination mixed with what might have been sympathy. She changed direction, heading straight toward me instead of her supposed best friend. My stomach dropped. Whatever was about to happen, I suddenly knew that this party, this night, was going to change everything. Sarah reached me just as I set my drink down on a nearby table, my hand suddenly unsteady. Up close, I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes darted between me and where my wife continued to hold court across the room. "We need to talk," Sarah said quietly, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the party. "Now." "Sarah, if this is about whatever's going on between you and—" "It's about what's going on between you and your wife," she interrupted, her tone sharp enough to stop me mid-sentence. "Or rather, what she thinks is going on. What she's been saying is going on." Before I could respond, my wife's laughter rang out again, louder this time. We both turned to see her with a different group now, her hand on the shoulder of James from sales. Sarah's expression hardened. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Too long," Sarah replied. I kept thinking she'd stop, that she'd realize what she was risking. But it's gotten worse. She paused, taking a breath. "She thinks you're blind. She's been saying it for months." The words hit me like a physical blow. Saying it to whom? To me. To other friends. In our group chat. Sarah's fingers tightened around her phone. "She calls you safely oblivious. Says you're so desperate to keep her that you'll ignore anything she does." I felt the blood drain from my face. Around us, the party continued, oblivious to the earthquake happening in this corner of the room. Someone clinked a glass for a toast. Another burst of laughter erupted near the dessert table. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Because you deserve better. Because I can't be friends with someone who treats their partner like a joke." She glanced at her phone. "And because tonight, she's gone too far." Before I could ask what she meant, Sarah grabbed my arm, gently but firmly, and started walking toward where my wife stood. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to pull away, to stop whatever was about to happen, but my feet kept moving forward. My wife saw us approaching. For a split second, something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe concern, before she rearranged it into her party smile. "There you are," she called out, her voice bright. "I was just telling everyone about." "Your turn is over," Sarah announced, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet circle of people. She stepped closer to me, her grip on my arm tightening. "He's with me now." The smile froze on my wife's face. The emerald dress that had looked so beautiful earlier now seemed garish under the chandelier light. Several people in our immediate vicinity stopped talking, sensing drama. "Sarah, what are you?" my wife started, attempting a laugh that came out strangled. "Don't," Sarah cut her off. "Don't pretend you don't know exactly what I'm talking about." She held up her phone, screen facing my wife. "Should I read some of your messages out loud? Or would you prefer to explain yourself?" My wife's face went pale, all the color draining as if someone had pulled a plug. Her eyes darted to me, then back to Sarah, then around at the growing audience. I could see her mind racing, trying to calculate her next move. "Can we please not do this here?" my wife hissed, trying to regain some control. "Why not?" Sarah's voice remained steady, almost clinical. "You had no problem discussing your marriage here. You had no problem flirting with half the men in this room, confident that your husband was, and I quote, too pathetic to do anything about it." "I never said pathetic," my wife protested weakly. "You're right." Sarah swiped her phone screen. "The exact word you used was whipped. You said he was too whipped to ever leave, no matter what you did." The small crowd around us had grown silent. I could feel their eyes on us, on me, waiting to see how I would react. My wife reached out toward me, her eyes suddenly wet with tears. "Honey, please, she's taking things out of context. You know how Sarah exaggerates." "Show him," Sarah said flatly. "Show him the screenshots, or I will." My wife's hand dropped. Her mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. In that moment of her silence, I understood that everything Sarah was saying was true. Maybe I had known, somewhere deep down, but had been too afraid to acknowledge it. "I think we should leave," I said quietly, looking at my wife. "Now." We stood in the hotel corridor, away from the party but still able to hear the muffled music and conversation bleeding through the walls. The festive sounds felt obscene now, like laughter at a funeral. My wife leaned against the wall, her carefully applied makeup starting to smudge. Sarah stood beside me, phone in hand, waiting. "Please," my wife said, her voice small. "Can we just go home and talk about this privately?" "That's what you've been counting on, isn't it?" Sarah said. "That he'd want to keep it private. That he'd be too embarrassed to make a scene. That's literally what you told us, that his pride would keep him quiet." My wife's eyes flashed with anger. This is between me and my husband, Sarah. You have no right. I have every right as someone who cares about him, Sarah shot back. Someone had to tell him the truth, since you clearly never would. I held up a hand, stopping the argument. Show me, I said to Sarah, my voice hollow. Show me what she said. Sarah hesitated for just a moment, her expression softening as she looked at me. Are you sure? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She unlocked her phone and began scrolling. My wife made a move toward her, as if to grab the device, but I stepped between them. She stopped, wrapping her arms around herself instead. Sarah held the phone so I could read. The first screenshot showed a group chat named Girls' Night, with 5 participants including my wife and Sarah. The messages were dated 3 weeks ago. My wife, another corporate dinner tonight. Guess who'll be sitting at home playing video games? Face with tears of joy. Friend 1. Does he ever say anything? My wife. About what? He doesn't even notice. I could bring someone home and he'd probably offer them a beer. Friend 2. Girl, you're terrible. Face screaming in fear. My wife. I'm efficient. I get my fun, he gets his comfortable little life. Everyone wins. Sarah, that's not fair to him. My wife. Oh please, Sarah. He's too whipped to leave. I have it perfect. Marriage security with single girl freedom. I felt sick. Sarah swiped to another screenshot, this one more recent. Last week. Friend 1. Did you see Daniel's engagement photos? His fiancée is gorgeous. My wife. Doesn't stop him from flirting with me at work. Men are so predictable. Sarah. You're playing with fire. My wife. I'm playing with matches. There's a difference. And I've got a fire extinguisher at home who doesn't ask questions. The fire extinguisher. That's what she called me. A tool to put out problems, to provide safety and security while she did whatever she wanted. There's more, Sarah said quietly, but I shook my head. I'd seen enough. My wife had slid down the wall and was now sitting on the floor, her expensive dress pooling around her. Tears ran freely down her face, taking mascara with them. I didn't mean it, she whispered. It was just talk, just stupid talk with friends. I was venting. Venting about what? I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. What exactly were you venting about? The husband who worked extra shifts so you could take that trip to Europe? The one who supported your career change? Who took care of you when your father died? It wasn't about you, she insisted desperately. It was about me. I was just trying to feel. I don't know, interesting? Important. By making me look pathetic. By pretending I had some kind of power. She stood up, her voice rising. Do you know what it's like being married to someone everyone thinks is so nice, so perfect? Always reliable, always steady. It was suffocating. The honesty of it hit harder than the lies. At least now I was seeing something real. So you needed to prove you had control, I said slowly, understanding dawning. By flirting with other men. By seeing how far you could push before I'd react. By telling your friends I was too weak to stop you. It wasn't like that. That's exactly what it was like. Sarah's voice cut through. She turned her phone to show my wife another screenshot. This one's from tonight. 20 minutes before I came to find you. Read it. My wife's face went from pale to grey. My wife. Daniel just asked me to dance. This is going to be fun. Hubby's at the bar, completely clueless as usual. Sarah. Stop giving me that look. He's fine. He doesn't care. Sarah. I'm telling him tonight. My wife. You wouldn't dare. Sarah. Watch me. You were warned, Sarah said flatly. You knew I was done watching you humiliate him, and you still couldn't stop yourself. My wife looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in months. I do love you, she said, and for a moment, she sounded like the woman I'd married. I know I've messed up, but I love you. I thought about that. About love and respect and the difference between them. Maybe you do, I finally said. But you don't respect me. And I'm not sure which is worse, that you don't, or that I let you get away with it for so long. We didn't go back to the party. I texted my boss some excuse about a family emergency while my wife sat in the hotel lobby, still crying, and Sarah stood guard like a sentinel. Other guests from the party occasionally passed through, their curious glances adding weight to the humiliation I now fully felt. I'm going to get a hotel room here, I announced. For tonight. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. No, please. My wife stood up quickly, nearly stumbling in her heels. Come home. We need to talk this through. We can fix this. What's there to fix? I asked, genuinely curious. The disrespect. The lies. The fact that you've been treating our marriage like a joke for months, maybe longer. I made mistakes. Mistakes. The word came out harder than I intended. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is a thoughtless comment in anger. What you did was deliberate. Calculated. You built an entire narrative around what a fool I was, and you shared it with your friends for entertainment. Sarah cleared her throat. I should go. I've said my piece. She looked at my wife with something like sadness. I hope you figure out why you needed to hurt someone who only ever loved you. Then to me, if you need anything, a place to stay, someone to talk to, call me. After Sarah left, my wife and I stood in awkward silence. The hotel lobby continued its evening rhythm around us, business travelers checking in, couples heading to the restaurant, a family with tired children dragging luggage toward the elevators. When did it start? I asked. When did you start seeing me as someone to mock instead of someone to love? She wiped at her eyes, smearing what remained of her makeup. I don't know. It was gradual. You were always so understanding, so patient. At first, I loved that about you. But then you started testing it. Pushing boundaries to see what you could get away with. She nodded miserably. I think I wanted you to fight back. To get jealous or angry. To show some fire. When you didn't, when you just kept being nice and understanding, I started to see it as weakness instead of strength. The honesty was brutal, but I appreciated it more than her earlier denials. So you punished me for being what you said you wanted. I'm so sorry. Her voice broke. I know I've destroyed your trust. I know I've humiliated you in front of your colleagues. But 8 years has to mean something. We can get counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I thought about those 8 years. The good moments, and there had been many, now felt tainted, like photographs that had been doctored. How many times had she laughed with me while planning to laugh at me with her friends? How many intimate moments had been filed away as ammunition for group chats? Do you even know who I am? I asked. Not the fire extinguisher, not the safely oblivious husband. Me. Do you know what I care about? What keeps me up at night? What I dream about? She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence was answer enough. I'm getting that room, I said. Go home. Tomorrow, we'll talk about practical things, living arrangements, lawyers if it comes to that. But tonight, I need space. Lawyers. Her voice went shrill. You're talking about divorce already. I'm talking about protecting myself. Something I should have done a long time ago. As I walked toward the reception desk, she called after me, I'm not the villain here. I made mistakes, but you weren't perfect either. You were so passive, so content to just let life happen. I felt invisible. I turned back. So you made sure everyone saw you. Everyone except me. I paused. That's the part that hurts most. You didn't come to me with your feelings. You went to everyone else. You made me the last to know that my marriage was failing. The receptionist, clearly uncomfortable with the domestic drama playing out in her lobby, quickly processed my room request. As I took the key card, my phone buzzed. Messages from colleagues who'd been at the party, some offering support, others clearly fishing for gossip. I turned the phone off. My wife was still standing there, looking lost in her expensive dress, when the elevator doors closed. The hotel room was generic and clean, neutral colors, abstract art, the faint smell of industrial cleaning products. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my suit, and let the evening replay in my mind. The worst part wasn't the humiliation or even the betrayal. It was the realization that I'd been complicit in my own diminishment. By not setting boundaries, by accepting behavior that made me uncomfortable because I didn't want to seem jealous or controlling, I'd enabled exactly what I'd feared. My phone buzzed again. I'd turned it off, but apparently not all the way. One message had come through from Tom, my colleague from the party. Don't know what happened, but saw you leave with Sarah. Whatever it is, you didn't deserve to find out like that. We've all seen how she treats you. You're better than that. So my colleagues had noticed. Of course they had. I'd been the only one blind to it, or maybe just the most determined to stay blind. I didn't sleep. As dawn broke over the city, I stood at the window watching the streets below come to life. Delivery trucks, early commuters, someone walking a dog. Normal life, continuing obliviously while mine fractured into before and after. My phone showed 17 missed calls from my wife and dozens of texts that progressed from apologetic to angry to desperate. I read them in order, watching the dissolution of her composure in real time. The last one, sent at 3:47 a.m., simply said, "I'm scared." Good, I thought, then felt guilty for thinking it. But wasn't I entitled to some satisfaction? Some sense that consequences existed? At 8 a.m., I called her. She answered before the first ring finished. "Thank God," she breathed. "I thought you'd blocked me." "We need to talk." "Not at home. There's a coffee shop on 3rd Street. "I know the one. I'll be there in 20 minutes. 30. I need to shower and change." I paused. "And I'll be bringing someone." "Who?" "Sarah. Your lawyer." "A witness. I don't trust us to have this conversation alone." She arrived at the coffee shop looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a sweater I'd bought her for Christmas. Beside me, Tom sat with a notebook, having agreed to my request to be present and take notes if necessary. "You brought someone from work." Her voice carried an edge of hysteria. "You want to humiliate me more." "I want a record of what's said." "So do you, if you're smart. This isn't about humiliation. This is about clarity." We ordered coffee none of us really wanted and sat at a corner table. Saturday morning regulars tapped on laptops and read newspapers around us, providing the illusion of privacy through the white noise of normalcy. "I've been thinking all night," my wife began, her hands wrapped around her cup like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. "About why I did what I did. About what I really want. And I want us to work. But I understand if you can't forgive me. I understand if you need time." She glanced at Tom, clearly uncomfortable with his presence. "I'm prepared to do marriage counseling, individual therapy, whatever you need to trust me again." "That's not how trust works," I said. "You can't rebuild something you deliberately demolished. You can only build something new." "Then we'll build something new." She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Her expression crumpled. "Please. 8 years. We've been through so much together." "We've been through things beside each other," I corrected. "But I'm not sure we've been through them together. Not really. Not with the respect that requires." Tom shifted uncomfortably but kept quiet, his role clear, witness, not participant. My wife's composure finally broke completely. "What do you want from me? You want me to beg? Fine, I'm begging. You want me to admit I was cruel and stupid and took you for granted? I admit it. What else do you need? I need you to understand that this isn't about what you did last night. It's about who you've been for months, maybe years. It's about a pattern of disrespect that ran so deep you shared it with your friends like it was entertainment." "I know. I'm not finished." My voice stayed level, but firm. "You need to understand that I'm not the same person who walked into that party yesterday. That version of me would have made excuses for you, would have convinced himself that he was overreacting. This version. I met her eyes. This version knows his worth. She sobbed openly now, no longer caring about the public setting. So that's it. You've already decided. No, I said, surprising both of us. I've decided that I can't decide yet. I need time. Real time, not a weekend. And I need space. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while. How long? I don't know. A few weeks, maybe more. During that time, I don't want phone calls unless it's about logistics. I don't want promises or bargaining. I need you to sit with what you've done and figure out if you even know why you did it. And then we'll see. Maybe we try counseling. Maybe we move forward separately. Maybe something in between. I stood up. But whatever happens, it will be on terms of mutual respect, or it won't happen at all. Tom and I left her sitting there. As we reached the door, I heard her say quietly, "I really do love you, you know." I turned back. She looked small and broken, nothing like the sparkling figure from the party. "I believe you do. But love without respect is just another form of taking. And I'm done being taken from." 2 months later, we signed divorce papers in a lawyer's office downtown. She cried. I didn't. We'd tried 3 sessions of counseling, but the fundamental problem remained. She wanted to be forgiven so life could return to normal, while I understood that normal had been the problem all along. The divorce was civil, relatively quick, and fair. She kept the condo. I took the car and most of the savings. She agreed without fighting, perhaps understanding that she'd lost the right to negotiate. Sarah called the day after the papers were filed. "How are you doing?" "Better than I expected," I said honestly. "Sad, but not devastated. More relieved than anything." "Good. You deserve better." A pause. "I'm sorry I waited so long to tell you. I should have said something sooner." "You told me when I was ready to hear it. Maybe not a day sooner." I meant it. 6 months after the party, I ran into my ex-wife at a bookstore. She was with someone new, laughing in that same sparkling way. When she saw me, the laughter died. We exchanged awkward pleasantries. She was doing well, her new job was great, she hoped I was happy. "I am," I said. "Getting there, anyway." As I walked away, I overheard her tell her companion, "That's my ex-husband. I really messed that up." At least she finally understood. I'm dating someone now. Someone who thinks my steadiness is a strength, not a weakness to exploit. Someone who speaks respectfully about me to her friends because she respects me in private first. It's still new, still fragile, but it's built on honesty. Sometimes I think about that party, about the wife I was married to and the husband I was being. Both of us were performing roles we thought we were supposed to play, rather than being honest about who we actually were. The difference is that I was trying to be faithful to vows I'd made, while she was trying to see how many she could break before I noticed. Sarah and I have coffee sometimes. She never says "I told you so," though she'd have every right. Instead, she just asks how I'm doing, really doing, and listens to the honest answer. The company gossip about the party has mostly died down. Some people treat me with extra kindness, others with the uncomfortable distance people reserve for the publicly wounded. I've learned to accept both with equal grace. I'm not the fire extinguisher anymore, existing only to make someone else's chaos safe. I'm not the reliably oblivious husband, too whipped to demand better. I'm just myself, flawed, learning, rebuilding. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough.